I will. Hello, everybody, and welcome. It's another episode of Let's Talk Broncos. Zach and I are here. We are grading the Broncos draft today. I hope you guys checked out all of our individual videos of every pick, pretty much every pick, unless they were the ones that were really close together. And then we broke down them both. But yeah, I hope you guys checked those out. Those were just our instant reactions. Now we've had some time to sit on it, unwind, think about the draft, and we are going to be grading the Broncos draft today. Zach, but first, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Excited to be here. Excited to wrap up the draft with you. I had a great time covering it with you. I hope the Nuggets can close out the series tonight. That would solve like my last remaining anxiety, and then ready to roll.
Let's go. The first thing I want to hit, though, Zach, is, you have Ben Albright tweeting reunited gifs as other people are saying that the Pittsburgh Steelers are making a trade for a wide receiver, which leads us all to believe that Courtland Sutton is going to be traded, obviously, because he's like not showing up to things and he doesn't want to show up to things until he gets his extension. How do you think that this is Courtland Sutton? Let's just get that out the bag first. What do you think about that?
I think there's a very good chance it is. I think it hasn't happened yet. Ben tweeting that out sent up a smoke flare or a signal flare rather to the NFL world. All the insiders are at least in the loop about what Albright's reporting. They would want to, because it's also not an official report, they would want to be first. Like that's what the insider game is all about, is being first. So everyone is probably scrambling right now to be the first to report this story. And it hasn't been reported yet. So that tells me it hasn't happened yet. I think there's a good chance talks are happening, right? Courtland Sutton's holding out. So that's always a motivator for a trade. He's been rumored on the trade block for 2 years now, at least like a whole calendar year, 18 months. It's been insane how long he's been rumored on the trade block. We finally saw Judy, after being on the trade block himself for a few years, finally go. Maybe now is Sutton's time. And then, the reunited thing all makes sense. So it's very possible. It would also make sense if it's DK. It also hasn't happened yet. These trades break down. It was well reported how the John Franklin Myers trade almost fell through, because when the Broncos and Jets had agreed to terms, the Jets then included one of the draft picks in that agreed upon to trade in a trade up for Malachi Corley. So then the Broncos and Jets had to get back on the horn and figure out like new compensation. There's a chance that compensation didn't get reworked and then the trade doesn't happen. So it's never done until it's done. Randy Gregory deal, unfortunately, is a great example of that. So that's what I say.
I want to give a shout out to Kathy. She says, "Hi boys, 2:10 a.m. in Germany. Here wanting to hear your thoughts on the Broncos draft live. Thank you for joining us today. This is awesome that you're here at 2:10 a.m. I promise we will make it worthwhile, or I'll try my best to make it worthwhile. Tomorrow you might regret it regardless, but I'm gonna try my best, Kathy." Okay, here's the next question I have. Kathy, if you haven't been paying attention, the Broncos might trade Courtland Sutton here. Zach, here's my question. CTE, ESPN, how much stock are we putting into them now that they leaked all the jerseys?
I think a little. I retroactively figured out one of the people who leaked one of the things to CT ESPN, and they said they did it because it's CT ESPN, so no one's going to take it that seriously. It's not like leaking something to Adam Schefter. You were in the loop about this too, but we can discuss that off mic. It's not like leaking something to Adam Schefter or leaking something to Ian Rappaport, where, again, they put that out. That is the signal flare going up. CT ESPN put something out, and it's not taken quite as seriously. It doesn't get as much play. It's a less hot, chaotic situation, maybe a less stressful situation for whoever's leaking it, maybe a funnier situation for whoever's leaking it. And maybe that's their motivation. Maybe they think it's a funny bit to leak something to CT ESPN. Goodness, to see it be reported by Antonio Brown. It's become a bit of a meme. I think it started off as a joke because Antonio Brown was just making like wild free agency predictions, and like a couple of them came true. And then he was like, "Yep, CT ESPN had it first." And now it's just spiraled into a thing where I think it's, at least for the short-term future, I think it's going to continue. I would never take them as gospel, but I think like they're memeing, but they also are reporting things that are real too. So I don't think you can take it that seriously, but I think you have to consider it might be real when they put something out there, as crazy as that is. But they clearly are getting real information leaked to them while also putting out nonsense. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough.
No, I have firsthand knowledge of how troll accounts can get inside information, man. I have firsthand information. Anyways, let's move on here. We are grading the Broncos draft. That's what we're going to do today. And I want to start off with the first pick. At pick number 12, the Broncos picked Bo Nix. Zach, give me your draft grade.
I've warmed up to it a bit. I think I'm going to go C+. Because I do think, I don't know. I think the process behind it is good. Ultimately, that won't matter if Bo Nix isn't a good NFL quarterback. Like, I think you could argue the Arizona Cardinals process with Josh Rosen was really good, but doesn't really matter, So I think the process, and the way they went about it makes sense, was good. Maybe you could say they should have tried to get more value out of it. Another quarterback didn't go until the 6th round. But I don't know. I think they managed that aspect really well. It just comes down to the evaluation. I do think there are real questions, and I don't want to beat a dead horse. I discussed it on, kind of the Sunday recap. And then during our first round show, our second round show, I do think there are legitimate concerns as to how good can Bo Nix become. He's played a lot of college games, and he's still, quarterback 6 in his class. The most college, after the most college development of anyone ever. He's the oldest quarterback we've seen drafted in the last couple decades, outside of Brandon Weeden, who is like an extreme outlier in his own right. And the people in that club, like the 24 and up club, are really not promising outside of Joe Burrow. So I don't know. I do think there's real concerns, but he has the athletic tools where it's not going to be I've seen him compared to Tua some. I don't think he's going to be like Tua, where he just gets maxed out so easily. I do think there is the potential for development there. One thing I do like as well, something you were highlighting throughout the shows, was we've already seen the development and growth from him. He's grown a ton from when he was a true freshman starter at Auburn. So that coachability, that ability to grow is there. He's, with all that experience, he's picked up some bad habits as well. He's picked up some battle scars. You see some skittishness in his play, and can that get broken out of him? Can the bad habits be broken after all this time? I guess is kind of what my concern is. But it's hope for the franchise, and it's a good roll of the dice. I think he is a late first round talent, maybe early second round talent. So I'm not that horrified at the reach. And then the last thing I'll say here, I'm sorry, I know I've been going for a bit, but something I've been thinking about here. It's a draft hot take I kind of want to get off. I think the Bo Nix pick is already going to be worth it. No matter what happens in September and onwards, for a good chunk of Broncos country. I don't know if it's majority, but I do think it's a healthy chunk. it's the ultimate goal is not winning and Super Bowls. Like it kind of is, but it's really like as a capitalist product, like to make money. And that is correlated to fan enjoyment, which is highly correlated to winning, but not necessarily. Like the off season right now, our emotions are going up and down. No games are being played, right? For a huge chunk of the fan base, the idea of entering these next several months with just Jarrett Stidham, Zach Wilson, and Ben DiNucci in that quarterback room would have been so miserable and so depressing and ruined their fan experience and kind of their outlook of the team for a good while. Instead, Bo Nix is going to provide them hope for a long-term future. The Broncos finally getting out of the wilderness, finally finding salvation, even if it doesn't happen. I mean, we saw with Drew Lock. Drew Lock was, by any metric, a decidedly worse quarterback than Teddy Bridgewater. I still see a ton of Denver Broncos fans that prefer him to Teddy Bridgewater. Some of it's about hope and optimism, and Bo Nix provides that. And I don't know, that's at least something. I'll give it a C+.
C+. Okay, that's higher than you initially came out, I feel like. So
I've warmed to it.
Yeah. That's why we're doing the grades a little after the initial reaction. You know what I mean, Zach? That's exactly why. I'm giving it a B-. So I'm really close to you. I ultimately don't agree with the evaluation, but I'm absolutely fine with the process. I'm absolutely fine with it. To everybody that says it's a reach, it's kind of crazy to me because here's my whole deal. It's you are valued as much as the league values you. And you can't convince me that the Broncos could have traded back and still got Bo Nix and say that confidently. That's definitely something that could have happened, but I also could give you a very likely scenario where it didn't happen. So I think that's probably, is it a reach or is it not? If the Broncos picked or if the Raiders picked Bo Nix, would we all have been shocked? I don't know. I don't know if we all would have been shocked. So is it a reach? Is it a reach? Like that's my question. I think based off the talent level, maybe, but the quarterback gets drafted high. Like that is what it is. So if you wanted Nick, you had to draft him at 12, or you're risking him being gone. And I think there's very real likelihood that he was gone at that point. So I'm absolutely fine with the process.
That's fair. I do think, I don't know. I think it's both, right? That's maybe with where the chips were falling, where if you wanted to get your guy, you had to take him. I think it's also a little concerning that maybe you're taking this level of prospect top 15. You know, I think it's both.
Yeah.
You know,
Zach, outside of the top 5, you're going to have to do that. There's no such thing where you don't do that. Really? Like if you think the guy is good enough, you draft him there. That's
Joey,
really
what grade did you give the Knicks pick? I'm sorry, really quick, just as we react to the super chat that just came in.
I gave it a B-.
Okay, so we average out to about the same, like a B- C+-ish pick. That's like not, hey, look at the media world. Okay, in Broncos country. Maybe
Go
we
Lakers,
are.
By the way. Shout out the Wicked Broncos Productions.
Shout out Wicked Broncos. Absolutely. And thank you for the support. But I'm just saying, I don't think we're hating that much. Maybe relative to Broncos fans. Okay. But if we were as high on every Broncos move as Broncos fans, we'd just be Broncos fans. Right? Why listen to us at that point? You know, that's your guys' job. Right? If we shouldn't be higher on every move than you guys are, that would be a little odd if we were more fanatical than the fanatics, right? That wouldn't make a lot of sense. But yeah. I do like it. The Wicked Broncos and I have been going back and forth on Twitter. Appreciate you.
I want to read this real quick, Zach.
Sorry, Joey.
I know you guys hate the Bo Nix pick, unlike most people. I give it an A+ on what we had to work with. Nobody will care if we reached for Nix if he's good. Getting Troy, Ellis, Estime, and Drain is an insane haul. Go Lakers, by the way. You know what, man? The only offense I take to this is go Lakers, by the way. And I'm joking. Thank you, Wiki Broncos Production, for joining the chat today. Really, really, really appreciate the support. But yeah, my whole thing with it is I can't be too critical of it because I like the talent. I like the process. This is why you hired Sean Payton. Why did you hire Sean Payton if you weren't going to follow through with his evaluations on quarterbacks, right? Why did you trade that first round pick for Sean Payton if he were like, this is the guy, and you were like, no, it's not? Like, why would you have traded that first round pick for him? So I think that this is a great process. Matter of fact, I like that the football people are doing the football decisions. I texted that in the chat today. It doesn't feel like there's a power struggle anywhere in Broncos land right now. Shout out to Mike Kliss. There's no power struggle whatsoever. Imagine being a Panthers fan where you're like, man, CJ Stroud should be a Panther right now. Our coach wanted CJ Stroud, but the owner stepped in and said no, or the GM or whatever. That's not the case here. The Broncos coach that you traded a first-round pick took the guy that he obviously loves the most. So I'm fine with the process. One thing I want to bring to you in the Bo Nix conversation, Zach, the discourse with Bo Nix when he was at Auburn, what was it? It was, man, this guy's wildly talented, starting as a true freshman, but he can't figure it out. He's an idiot. Now the conversation is turned into, man, he's really smart. He's a really smart football player. He operates quick game really, really well. But does he have enough natural talent?
Natural talent, and
will
he get that aggression back?
Will
he get that aggression back? Because right now he is a very, I don't know, I don't know if very is the right word, but he's a pretty gun-shy quarterback. Like, he passes up a lot of deep opportunities for the shorter covered options. I see that, like, I would warn Broncos country, like, there is a fair bit of Teddy, I think, to his game on that, like, where I think he's gone maybe, and it's a point to his development, but I think he's gone a little too far. I think he's a pretty conservative quarterback right now. Even when the looks are there for him to pull the trigger on, I think he chooses to not pull the trigger far too frequently. Unfortunately, that would be one of my knocks on him. Now, I think that's something you can coach out of him. The fact he was such a wild stallion at Auburn makes me optimistic. You can hopefully get him to some happy medium between those two extremes. But I do like his ADOT last year was 124 out of 125.
But if Oregon's you watch the offense, it makes sense, Zach.
Yeah, but agreed. But the offense, like, yes, some of it is the offense, but he's not the only team running that offense. He's also not the only elite program running that funky offense, like running this spread offense. And he's 124th out of 125. We're not talking about 100th or a 90th or something, like at the very bottom. Like, and some of that absolutely is the offense. A lot of it. Some of it is they could torch their opponents because of it. Some of it is he is passing up shots that the offense is giving him.
Zach, when I watch the film, it's screen, mesh, screen, run up the middle, screen, mesh, and then it's deep shot. Those are like what he has going on, unless he's in a third and long.
Some of those third and longs, and on some of those third and
here's what I would say. You said that he's not the only quarterback in that offense. Yeah, he has the low ADOT. Here's a counterpoint. He's not the only quarterback in that offense. Yet, didn't he just record the highest completion percentage of all time? And people will say that is just because the offense. So we have to pick a side here. We have to pick a side here.
I'll tell you this. Low ADOT is correlated to high completion percentage. If you're not throwing the ball downfield, if you're taking the safe shots all the time, it's a better chance it's going to be completed. And I don't want to get too negative on Bo Nix. We're debating this 1 point of him. I stand by my C+. I think there's a clear path to it working out. I think the flaws in his game are all coachable. I do think we've seen that as players get older, it's harder to coach those things and change those things. But at the quarterback position, we see them, grow and change throughout their 20s and their 30s. So I don't know. Like I'm truly optimistic about the path there, but there are some flaws to me.
Perfect. I want to get to the super chats. Mr. Rocket, I don't know if Bo will be good, but I know Denver is 100% the place. He has the best chance to succeed, best coach, best system, college wide receiver. I hope it's great. I think that's a great point. I think I wouldn't have as much hope with Bo Nix as I do right now. I don't think I'd grade it a B- with any other coach in the league. I just think that that's a good pairing there between what he wants to do and everything like that. We got another from Wicked Bronco Productions. I honestly think we had to have a quarterback, and I'm so glad it wasn't JJ. JJ will be a bust. JJ was carried in college football by his defense and running game. Nix and Franklin were the entire Ducks offense. As a Notre Dame fan, Estime equals steal. We're going to get the Estime. I totally agree with you. The more I watch Estime, he's unbelievable.
Yes, and thank you so much for the support, Wicked Broncos Productions. That is killer right off the bat. One thing I would agree on to like try and find somewhat of a middle ground. I think like the pre-draft hype around JJ McCarthy was probably way too like relative to the Bo Nix stuff. Like I think those guys, and honestly, Jaden Daniels. I think like if I were to tier it, so much of it was like there's the big four. And then there's like the three guys after, the three being Nix, Penix, and Rattler. If I had to tier it out, I think it would have been you have the big two. And then I don't know. I think I might like slowly stack the five out. I don't see a clear tier break. I think McCarthy and like I was not a big Jaden Daniels fan at all. I would say McCarthy, Jaden Daniels, and Bo Nix are all pretty similar for me. And then there's a drop to like Penix and Rattler. So that element, I don't know. I think it's okay. I don't think it's a horrible reach. I think he's the type of prospect that, like we're saying, goes typically end of the first round. You get a mid first round because of the way the board was falling. You kind of maybe had to do that at quarterback. But yeah, top 15 pick. I think you need he's playing point guard right now. Like the best version of Bo Nix, that we've seen is him playing point guard. And I think to be a top 15 pick at quarterback, the hope is that you're going to be more than a point guard or just more than a distributor, more than like a Tua. I think you want him to be creating some, and the potential is there for that. I think we need to see more of that.
Fair enough. Let's move on to the next pick here. We are 22 minutes into this podcast, and we are
sorry.
The second pick. It's both of us, man. The Broncos picked Jonah Ellis, edge rusher out of Utah, with their third round pick 76. We also broke this one down, Zach. What would you give this grade? And give me a little reason why.
It's a good question. I think I would go about B- here. Steve Bronx has been hating the Bo Nix pick for a while now. I would give it like a B-. There's some elements of it I really like the tape on the player is really good. I think Jonah Ellis, the player in a vacuum, would be getting a B+ for me in that range. It's not like ridiculous value, but I do think, and the consensus board agrees, like you are getting, like he fell a bit. He should have maybe gone higher, was perceived as a player that would have gone higher. And drop down the board. Position of need for the Broncos at edge. They've got two of these guys leaving that position. It moves Drew Sanders almost certainly back to inside linebacker. The two guys leaving are Browning and Cooper coming up on their deals. So this gives them some insurance there. All those elements I like. It fits Vance Joseph really well. Frankie laid that out in his article up on our website, letstalkbroncos.com. Right there on the front page, super easy to find. He did an in-depth breakdown on how Jonah Ellis will fit in this Vance Joseph defense and kind of create nightmares for opposing offenses. All that I really like. The redundancies and I know we disagree here a little, but I think the redundancies with the edge rushers already in the room, to me, that being, and it's not, they're not all identical, but the fact they're all guys that right now I don't really love playing on early downs, John Franklin Myers and Jonathan Cooper excluded. But a lot of the young guys on rookie deals are guys I don't trust playing on those early downs, and kind of are like these designated pass rushers, kind of like Noah Ellis. That's wart number one for me. Wart number two is apparently the medicals with him were very concerning for a lot of teams, which is part of the reason he fell. We aren't privy to that information on my end, but George Paton, unfortunately, has a rough track record of some bad gambles on these injury-prone players, and so that raises some alarm bells for me. That makes me a little nervous. Someone said in our chat, I forget if it was you or Frankie or Robbie, or Jacob or Jason, but someone called him poor man's Laiatu Latu, or like the later round in the draft.
Yeah.
And like, I love that comp, like both kind of designated pass rushers, but incredibly like polished technicians. I wouldn't be surprised if he's their best, like pure pass rusher outside of John Franklin Myers from day one. Like the talent's there. So I've talked myself up on it. I'm going to give it a B. I don't know the medicals. I can't be that worried about it. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm also giving it a B. I went through and watched all of his film, and I stand firm on this. I think he's completely different than every other. I think the way he attacks the run is different. I think he still does struggle day one in a lot of the scenarios. I think ultimately you're going to have to worry about if his frame allows him, but it's not like he has extremely short arms. The guy has 33-inch arms. And you see it in this film. He's just a shorter guy. And to anybody that's played football, what is the number one thing that coaches will tell you, even from a very young age? It's that the lowest man wins. It's the length I'm worried about, not the height. It really isn't. So, I think Ellis was a pretty solid pick. It's just whether his frame holds up. Can he add weight to his lower half? But I think the way he attacks the passer is completely different than anybody on the Broncos. I think his mentality on hustle play is completely different than anybody on the Broncos. And I think the way he wants to be in plays like a physical football player, completely different than anybody on the Broncos. I don't see the redundancy. I don't see the redundancy. And I think that matters. Like, certain tackles are better against speed rushers than they are power guys and technician guys. I like all of that matters to me. I'm not getting redundancy there because against tackles Nick Benito struggles against to get after the passer, I think that Jonah Ellis may succeed against. And I think that could work vice versa. So that's a plus in my mind massively, especially when you include the John Franklin Myers aspect of it all. I just think it's a good pick, a solid pick. The consensus big board had him at 79 and the Broncos took him at 76. So it's a solid pick. We got a super chat here from Paul. Paul's always in the chat. Shout out to Paul. Always sending the super chats. Even though 24 might be long having a young quarterback, hoping he pans out, it keeps fans engaged. My friends do such amazing work. Shout out to you, Paul. Shout out to you for always being here, man. Shout out to you for always being able to help us out. This all goes back into the podcast. We don't pocket literally any of this. It goes all right back into the podcast and keeping things alive on the blog as well. So shout out to you, man.
Yep. Like our live events, getting stuff for the giveaways for that. We're not profiting here. We are just building this thing up. So thank you all for the support. It is absolutely huge. Just everyone in the chat, Broncos or Wicked Bronco Production. I need to say it right. Wicked Bronco Productions has already dropped $40. We had another 5 from Mr. Rocket. Everyone coming through ridiculously huge. So thank you, everyone in the chat tonight. It means a lot to us.
Perfect. So let's talk about Troy Franklin. Troy Franklin was the next player the Broncos drafted. 4th round, they traded up, and they actually did give up some value here. I thought it was fine. to trade up because of how many picks they had on day 3. But they ended up picking him with pick 102. What do you grade this pick?
Man, I think I'm a B plus. I think I'm a B plus on it. Yeah, I'll go there. He's a good player. I just, especially at that point in the draft.
Give your positives. That's a B plus.
Good grade. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just there's some stuff that scares me. Okay, he's an incredible athlete. You aren't going to get a guy with his athleticism and I think relative polish at that point in the draft very frequently at all, especially when you factor in the production. When I say relative polish, like this guy is not super pro ready. I don't love the idea of throwing him to the wolves after like a Sutton trade in year 1. But I do think there's some elements where he can come in year 1, play a fair bit of snaps, have a clear role, and help the offense. I love the idea of pairing him with Bo Nix. I think having that comfortability and having that kind of translator for both sides of the relationship, I think is huge. One, it's going to be a comfortability factor. Like he's already going to have a guy he has incredible chemistry with, through camp, through preseason, into the season to work with. But also Troy Franklin's going to be in those receiver rooms every day and can help. Like it's small stuff, but man, when everything about this franchise is coming down to making Bo Nix work, I care about all the little tiny details. And the fact that you're going to have him in all those meeting rooms, helping those guys know, what Bo Nix likes looking for, how he throws the ball, what he wants his slants to look like. Cause it is like, it's small stuff, but you see it whenever you watch like Hard Knocks or what's the in-season one? Like, I know there's an in-season Hard Knocks, but there's like a All or Nothing. Like if you see those, whenever it's the quarterbacks working with the receivers, they're talking about the different tempoing or the different ways they want their routes run from a timing angle. Troy Franklin's going to know all that stuff from day 1, locked in with Bo Nix. I think all that element is huge. And then he's just I think a very talented player. I'll let you do mainly the negatives, but he's an incredible vertical threat. I'll start there. I think it's not just vertical either. Like I think he's not going to break a ton of tackles, but he's like really good on like getting yards after the catch on slants or whatever. We've talked about how Oregon's offense wasn't super vertical. It was a lot of underneath stuff. 124th out of 125 in ADOT. A lot of what Troy Franklin was doing was taking these mesh concepts, taking these slants, taking these short over things, these intermediate short in breakers, a staple of Sean Payton offenses, and taking them for extra yardage with his speed. He is like a natural runner with the football in that sense. Again, he's not the strongest guy. He's not going to be, breaking crazy tackles or anything, but I do think he's a little shifty in that aspect. Let me see is there something I'm missing here? I think that's it on the positives. It's just what you have with him, I think is already really exciting. He understands. Oh, one thing I mentioned, I think the route running ceiling is fairly low with him just because he's got some tightness that I don't think like is going to get better with age necessarily. But I think he really maximizes what he has. He's good at understanding, like we saw it with Jamison Williams when he was coming out of Alabama. I think Williams was more advanced in this regard, but that ability to use your speed to make a cornerback really uncomfortable. It's not just running by the guy. Like you'll see him get up on the cornerback's feet and then like hit the gas in whatever direction. And it just is like, it makes the cornerback shit their pants. It's sorry, Bud West. But just that understanding, or also like just how to tempo his routes. Yeah, all of it. I think there's some really promising stuff there with Franklin as a route runner on the mental end. I've gone long enough, Joey. Be the party pooper.
Okay, sorry guys, my lighting is screwed up. I'll fix this in just a sec. But I'm lower on this one than you are, Zach. This is my lowest one. I'm going to give it a C if I'm being honest. I'm just not a big Troy Franklin believer, and I know that's going to shock people. Just hear me out. I've watched the film, and I have an opinion on the guy, and I am totally open to people disagreeing with me. I just have a big struggle with him in the physicality department. I saw the Broncos draft Jerry Jeudy. I saw the Broncos draft KJ Hamler back to back. And here's my thing. There's certain things that you need out of prospects. Linebackers that can tackle. You know what I mean? Like certain things like that. I need wide receivers that can catch. And part of that is wide receivers that can catch through contact. Deal with physicality. And that's something I have an issue with in Troy Franklin's game. Is just, I think he is a vertical threat, and I wonder if he can become anything else outside of that. I just wonder if he can become anything outside of that, because to me, he's a contact avoidance guy. I think he's pretty good getting off a press, honestly, I do. I think when he gets pressed hard, when he isn't able to just break it immediately, he does struggle getting off of it, but a lot of the time he is able to break it immediately. After that, though, how does he look on in-breaking routes and stuff like that? He is a tall wide receiver, as Wicked Broncos production does point out. And D-Bronx says, if Jeudy was a fourth-round pick, that's good value. I agree, but Jerry Jeudy has a ridiculous route tree. That's something that Troy Franklin really doesn't have. I worry about how he looks in and out of his cuts. I just really, really worry he's nothing but a vertical threat. Then even when he is open, he does drop the ball a little bit. I just think this guy is a little bit more of a project than we're all willing to admit. And I think the NFL went out there and pretty much told us that he's a bigger project than most of media predicted. That's what I think. It's really funny. Frankie and I were on the timeline talking about, we're not really shocked that Troy Franklin's a day 3 player. Before the Broncos drafted him, right before the draft started. So I just am in the boat where I think this is a project. I think he has unreal talent. I think he is tall. I think he's fast. I think all of that type of stuff. The physicals are great. I worry about the hands. I worry about him avoiding contact. I worry about him catching through contact. And then I also worry, can he win at the catch point? And those are big factors in a wide receiver to me. So I'm just a little lower on it. I'm giving it a C.
Okay, I think that's fair. I'll be the one, pushing back on you and asking why you're being, so negative now. You bring up the him having some of the same issues as Jeudy and Hamler and that concern. Jeudy and Hamler, I saw this comment come up. Jeudy and Hamler were both top 50 picks. You're getting this guy at 102. On top of that, I imagine you want, especially considering the Courtland Sutton talk now, you're a fan of the Broncos adding a wide receiver to help out Bo Nix through the draft. Who else would you want them to target at this point? I think Troy Franklin was the best weapon on the board, or at least there has a very strong case for that.
Yeah, so I agree, but the thing with Jeudy and Hamler is that they could get wide open over the middle, which kind of negates for their ability to, or the ideal was they're not going to have to catch through contact because they're just wide open. They're terrific route runners. Troy Franklin at his best is nowhere near laterally as quick as either of those guys. And of course, the NFL kind of showed you that. These are guys that went in the first and second round, whereas Troy Franklin is a player that's drafted in the fourth. And my whole thing is, no matter how I dissect it there, the ability to deal with contact is why Jeudy isn't a terrific player. It really isn't. So let me take away Judy's ability to cut in and out of breaks, maybe give him a little more speed, like Troy Franklin has. Like that's the player I feel like I'm dealing with here. He's a burner to me. I think, to me, I don't know if anyone remembers him. Paul Richardson is out of CU. He played for Seattle for a couple years, is the comp I give him. And he was successful. If the Broncos can get what Paul Richardson's peak was as a performer, that would be awesome. I think it's Frankie gave it out, Robbie Anderson type player, Chosen Anderson. If he reaches his peak, he's that type of guy to me. I just worry about the over the middle stuff and everything like that. To me, he's a vertical threat, and then it's redundant with Marvin Mims a little bit. Can I play them both at the same time? I just have questions about this pick. That's all.
And I also think one little other pushback I'd say is I don't know how great of a separator Judy ended up being at the NFL level. And I also think like Troy Franklin for like you're getting open over the middle stuff. And a lot of it is kind of designed by the nature of, the Oregon offense. But Troy Franklin lived getting open over the middle. That's what he did for Oregon a lot.
Rub route.
Yeah.
Mesh. That's honestly what it was. It was
who runs like more mesh than damn near anyone? Like the Detroit Lions and the New Orleans Saints off that Sean Payton coaching tree. Or not the New Orleans Saints, but yeah, New Orleans Saints and Denver Broncos.
Yeah. I just think the windows get a little tighter in the NFL, and it's just harder to catch over the middle if you're already dealing with physicality issues. I don't know. That's just my little thing. I think he's an extremely talented player, and I could eat my words in a couple of years. That I'm just laying out my concerns. And yeah, someone said Devontae Smith. He points it out exactly. Smith is an extremely tough football player, man. He gets killed. He's Emmanuel Sanders. He gets killed and gets right back up, and he comes through with the ball through contact consistently. Something I just haven't seen from Franklin.
And he's not a burner. Like, I'll say this. He's not a burner like Troy Franklin. They are, I think, in terms of, they're very different, in my opinion. My comp for him, just as like a modern one, because I do love the Paul Richardson one. I think that's a pretty perfect comp. But if you don't know Paul Richardson Jr., my comp would be, I think he's like a smaller Marquez Valdez-Scantling. He's like a little shorter, a little lighter, but that same kind of thing. Not the most reliable hands. They're like really talented athlete and a great burner. And I think he's going to get open a lot as a result of that speed. I think he's a pretty special gets overused. He's a very, very, very good athlete, even, relative to other NFL players.
Perfect. Let's move on. We're spending a lot of time on all of these guys.
Yes.
Chris Abrams-Drain, drafted in the 5th round by the Broncos, pick 145. What do you make of this one? I think this was a pretty easy pick for the Broncos.
Yeah, this is an A for me. This is my favorite pick of the draft. I think it might be yours too. It is exactly what that's the thing. I kept getting high on this one, and then Esteve came 2 picks later, and it's like, shit, that one might be even better. But yeah, the 5th round has my 2 favorite picks in this draft for the Broncos. This is exactly, in my opinion, how the Broncos should have addressed their need at cornerback. I was getting into this debate with Bria Tunn, at least off mic, maybe some on mic, about not wanting a cornerback in the 1st round. Because her pushback was, well, the Broncos need a corner. What's the problem with them filling one of these needs, admitting, a wrong and going out and getting their guy? I said that I'm not wrong, mad with that element of it at all. I'd be mad with what it says about them trading 2/3 for Riley Moss and a 4th for Damari Mathis. But you do need they just spent a 4th on Damari Mathis. But you do need a corner opposite Pat Surtain. That is, right now they have no answer there. I know they signed Levi Wallace. Levi Wallace was brutal last year for Pittsburgh. He was, the less snaps he plays for the Broncos, the better. I feel very comfortable saying that. So they are betting pretty heavily on Damari Mathis, on Riley Moss. This is a perfect reality for me. It's an insurance plan. I think he's a great athlete, boundary corner, transition from wide receiver, looks like it, again, both in terms of athleticism and just play style, awesome ball skills. Watching that LSU tape was really fun. He gave Malik Neighbors a pretty dang hard time. The physicality is, I think, going to be the big question mark with him. A little like Troy Franklin, like really great athlete, but maybe like a little smaller frame, a little light, and I don't know how much bigger he can get. Though he is still pretty young, I think he can probably pack on some and be a little more physical. Fortunately, he's a boundary corner, so it's a little less of a concern for me than if he was like a slot guy where you're going to have to be more of a factor in the run game. But yeah, I just like as a coverage player, I think he's awesome. Maybe a little tight, but in like Vance Joseph's scheme, that's going to be a lot of like cover three or cover three like things. Like these zone blitzes, I think he's a great fit there. Again, the ball production is insane. Yeah, it just is. If Damari Mathis and Riley Moss don't work out, great option to throw in there. He might just develop and end up being better than them. And you didn't make the amount of capital you've spent at cornerback even more ridiculous. So yeah, bordering on A+ for me.
Let's highlight this real quick. Hojak Borsman, $5. Thank you so much for the super chat. He said Judy ran routes like it was 7-on-7, took forever to get open. This is a little true. This was the issue with Jerry Judy, was that he would run routes like 7-on-7 sometimes. Like he would end up open, but by the time he was open, the entire progression of the play was done with. Sometimes that was an issue. Hopefully you can clean up on that, man, because you have the talent. You just that really was an issue. Here's my take on Chris Abrams' drain. I've decided that I think he's a zone cornerback. I love his ball skills, right? I want him looking at the quarterback's eyes, reading the quarterback's eyes, and making plays on the football. That's what I want him to do. A lot of times in college, I just went through a bunch of his tape yesterday. He would not be in perfect scenario, but he has such great ball skills where it would make up for it. Okay, I just made a diving one-handed tip on the ball at the last second, which broke up the play. He is tremendous at spotting the ball in the air and making a play on it. He had a lot of production there at Missouri doing that. And I wonder if he's a nickel. I don't necessarily want him closer to the line of scrimmage because of the reasons he said, but I think he is feisty enough to come up and help and run support. I do think he has the mentality to do that, just whether his body will allow him. Like we saw it with
if he fills out, it could.
Well, it's like Bryce Callahan. Bryce Callahan had all the physicality in the world, but just couldn't stay healthy because, I mean, his body's not meant for this. There's guys like that. A lot of nickels. Jason Verrett stands out to me. Like these type of guys, it's hard. But I think it was a great gamble, as you said. This is exactly how the Broncos should have addressed their corner. So, yeah. And we got another super chat. Wicked Broncos Productions. Thank you so much again. Just so you guys know, Audric already has a nickname from us Notre Dame fans. We call him Audric Baby Bus. Yeah, I like that.
Ooh,
I like that, Jerome. Estime because he runs like Jerome Bettis. I love it. That one might have to stick, Zach.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that one.
Let's move on to that pick. Audric Estime, round 5, pick 147, Notre Dame running back. This is my favorite pick in the draft. This is my favorite pick in the draft right here. This one gets an A for me all day long. I was shocked. I was high on it when the Broncos drafted him because I'm like, yeah, the Broncos need a running back. Then I went and watched the film. And I came away thinking, how did this guy fall to round 5? I really did. He's not old. It's not like he's been in college forever. And he's that big, and he has great acceleration. He may not have ran the fastest 40, but great acceleration. Like off of his cut, he can hit 100 pretty fast. And I think he has borderline elite vision, especially for such a big guy. Dare I say, day one with the Broncos, he may be the best pure runner of the football. Not best overall running back, but best pure runner of the football might be Audric Estime to me. Dare I say. I think he's that good. I think the Broncos hit extreme value here with Audric Estime. He just knows how to play running back. He's really solid. He can pass protect. Day one, he's awesome. So this is my favorite pick in the draft.
Yeah, it's the last one or this one for me. I think they're both great picks. I think he could be the best running back on this team very, very early into the season. I think you look at if Javonte Williams is the Javonte Williams of last season, baby bust, I'm leaning into it, is going to be running back one sooner rather than later. Right now, Samaje Perine's on watch. I think Javonte Williams is too. I understand people loving the pairing of Javonte and Audric Estime. I think that's the most likely way this goes. I wouldn't be surprised if it's Estime for Javonte. Again, wouldn't be what I'd predict, but I would not be surprised by it in the slightest, just because you're going to set Joey off with the Patrick Paul love, David. But yeah, and it's an incredible value. You hit on that point. It fits what the Broncos are building right now. The idea of Audric Estime running behind like Quinn Miners and Mike McGlinchey or like Ben Powers pulling now, that the offense can lean more into that pin pull stuff, is very, very exciting. Worst case, he's a good insurance plan for Javonte Williams. Best case, you might have like something very special with this two-headed monster. If Javonte is able to properly return from that Grizzly knee injury, man, like you're gonna now you got a stew cooking like that's gonna be insane. You're gonna you can keep them totally fresh while they just hammer away at the defense. Give them 15 carries each every week and just melt your opponent down to a fine pace. And I think we're starting to see the NFL move this way. The Broncos aren't right out in front of the charge, but they're one of the early adopters. And I do think they'll be rewarded as a result, because most of the NFL's defenses are still like pass defense first. They are pretty light. They're not built to defend the run. And you've seen a lot of teams make solid playoff pushes off of efficient ground games. And you can be efficient because you can regularly get 4 or 5 yard chunks because you've got these big, strong guys and all these little fast guys on defense. And it's hard to bring them down before they pick up 5 yards. So many aspects of this pick I love. I think it's a home run. Let them cook.
Yeah, I think he helps the Broncos run game day one. Day one, I think he helps the Broncos run game. He's less of a tell than Jaleel McLaughlin is. Not as explosive, but less of a tell. He's a better runner than Samaje Perine is, straight up. And then we're waiting to see on Javonte Williams if he's fully back from his injury. So there is a very realistic chance that I think this guy's the best runner of the football on the Broncos this year, which is crazy to say, but I do believe it. Dare I say? Let's move on here. The Broncos drafted Devon Vell, or is it Veely? I think it's
Veely.
Veely. Okay, we're going to roll with Veely. Round 7. It's hard to be critical of round 7 players, but what do you make of Veely being 26 years old, by the way?
Valet, according to the University of Utah. I am okay with it. I don't know. If I'm being honest, I don't like it. It would not be my pick. It's a 7th round pick, and he is a pretty unique athlete. He's 6'4", running a 4.4 40. There's not many human beings like that on the planet. It's the same case for the flyer the Broncos took on Tyree Cleveland. And no, Tyree Cleveland didn't move the needle all that much for the Denver Broncos. But I bet, I haven't run the numbers on it, I bet he produced more than the average 250th overall pick. Because he could be a solid gunner, and he's a good athlete, and he could just stick around, and he was useful. And he was a smart player. I think that might be exactly what Valet is. And maybe he's just primarily used as a special teamer, but like I said, 6'4", 440, good hands. Or I wouldn't say good hands because they're pretty inconsistent, but the high end of them is pretty ridiculous. He makes some crazy grabs. He's got a good catch radius. It's just fairly inconsistent when it comes through. And yeah, the special athlete. The age thing though is a real concern. The craziest way I can frame this: when Marvin Mims is on his second contract, he will still be more than a year younger than Valet is right now. Like a year into his second contract, he'll be like still like 4 months younger than Valet is right now. That just, if he isn't ready to go in camp this year, he's not a guy I want to give a super long leash to, because it's like, dude, you're 26, about to be 27.
Yeah. So my take on this, I give it a C+ because of the age, but I think he is competing with Lil Jordan Humphrey, and he's either going to make the roster if he can beat out Lil Jordan Humphrey, and if he doesn't beat him out, he's probably cut. That's my take there. He's a big slot. That's his role here for the Broncos, and whoever's the better player through training camp probably makes it between him and Lil Jordan Humphrey. I'm giving it a C+. This is what it is.
I think the two best out of those two and Tim Patrick.
Yes.
I think Tim Patrick's probably the safest contractually, but they could still cut it. I think given the stage they're at in the rebuild, if Tim Patrick just like doesn't have it in training camp, I think they're comfortable just like eating that contract and giving the younger guys more snaps, you know?
Yeah. I don't know how to pronounce this last guy's name. I'll be honest, guys, I haven't really watched a ton of film. Round 7 pick. What would you say it again?
Gargiulo.
Nick Gargiulo out of South Carolina. To anyone that was a Spencer Rattler fan, I know David's in here right now, big Spencer Rattler guy. He didn't have a great offensive line, but from everything I hear, Nick here was a big help to him. He was a transfer out of Yale. He was a tackle at Yale, went to South Carolina, went into the interior of the offensive line. Broncos finally get an offensive lineman here, Zach. One day they will select a tackle. One day I'm very hopeful they'll be able to do that, but it's not today. It's not today. What do you make of this pick? Give me a grade.
Yeah, I didn't grade Valet. I'll give Valet a D. Gargiulo. Yeah, I think it's below average. I view it as like C's average.
That's more than below average.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like C. Well, what do you mean it's more than below average?
I mean, C- would be below average.
Or D+.
We got D+,
I think it's a few steps below.
Going down to D.
I think there were a good few players I would have rather them take, like Dallin Hoker. I mean, clearly they weren't that interested, but there were players that I think they could have taken that would be more likely to produce than a guy who's going to turn 27 in the middle of next season. Like I do. And I just like, he went in the 7th round, not purely because of his age either. Like he's a great athlete, and he went like in the 7th round at receiver, and like, I'll tell you why. It's the film. It's like not super great. Like, I don't think I'm not high on the pick. If it's a below average pick to me, I'm knocking it down some. Yeah, I'll give it a D+. I'll give it a D+.
I just got a DM saying I made it on Bronco. One second.
What happened, Joey? You made it on what?
Apparently, one of my tweets is on the Denver Broncos Twitter.
What?
Which would be amazing. Let's see if it happens.
We're infiltrating.
Let's see if it happens. Everyone,
everybody. Sorry, Wait, how would it be on the Denver Broncos Twitter?
I made it.
What is it? What happened?
That's cool.
What happened? Did they like your tweet?
League Rooks, and they put like a highlight video together, and then one of my tweets is in it.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I
might be famous now. I don't know any of you guys anymore. I give this grade a B, just because the Broncos finally drafted an offensive lineman. Hey, he's from Yale, so he's smart. And that's all I got on this one. I don't know much about him, honestly.
I'll give it a B too. If you can give me like a couple more seconds, I would really love to show everybody. I imagine most people have seen it. But if you haven't, Nick Gargiulo looks incredible.
Beautiful person.
And I think he looks a lot like Nikola Jokic. Oh, wow. Why is it so small? That's so weird. Whatever. You can still see it. But like, there's some Jokic in there. It's Jokic with a mustache and a mullet, I think. I think there's a shocking resemblance to me. Okay. You don't see it? You don't see it?
Jokic?
Nick in the face. Take that mustache off, give him a buzz cut, and that's Jokic.
You need to zoom in more. Bree sent us this, and she zoomed in on his face, and I was like, that is Jokic. But you need to zoom in more. Is that possible?
Okay, well, I don't think so.
All right. Okay. He doesn't look like Jokic to me then. Not anymore.
I think it's there. I think it's there. But I'm going to give him a B. They needed some interior line depth, and this will help that. I think he could probably play all three positions. I think he's only played one side of guard and center, but I don't know. I think you could probably feel comfortable putting him on the other side. And his tape was good. Like, I think it was a surprise that he fell to the 7th round. This was good value. I wish the Broncos did something similar in terms of like, hey, this is a solid depth investment with their other 7th round pick.
All right, fair
B
enough.
plus.
Cool. I gave it a B. Guys, that is it for today's episode. We have been live for over an hour. Thank you for everyone that's been in here the whole time. Shout out to Paul. Shout out to Atomic. Shout out to all the super chatters. Shout out to D Bronx. Everybody, Wicked Broncos production. Thank you so much. Seriously, I can't thank you guys enough for helping us out. Oh, I never did this one. Dante, I'm so happy I went back through the chat. We might have the meanest running back room with Estime now. I totally agree. We might have the meanest running back room with Estime now. Javonte and Estime are going to be a mean duo.
That's the vision, I think. Just like, man, if Javonte is right, it's going to be, I think, fun next year, at least on offense. The defense might be tough, but I think you can just like hammer away with Estime and Javonte and just, man, I think it could be really fun. We'll see. There's some optimism in me that this season could be a good time. Thank you everyone again for the support. This whole draft season, it's been amazing.
Yeah, seriously. Thank you guys so much. And until next time, go Broncos.